Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I have an update to share about that man who was found to have more than 150 homemade bombs and other explosives as well, and devices and ingredients on his property. If you didn't catch the original story, this is about a 36-year-old Virginia resident named Brad Spafford. There was a neighbor who's a former law enforcement officer who reported Spafford because he made some very concerning comments. He said that he wanted Kamala Harris to be assassinated, which we all make jokes. I mean, that could have been a joke, but Spafford said that he and his friends were planning some sort of event or something that was too big for him to pull off himself. Spafford also allegedly told the neighbor he wanted to erect a turret on his 20-acre property, and then he wanted to put a 50 caliber gun on top of that turret. And the authorities found that Spafford blew off 3 of his fingers in 2021 while he was making some of these explosives. So blew off his fingers and continued to do so, continued to make these bombs. And his wife was like, "Oh, I never noticed anything. I didn't know he had explosives." Like, yeah, okay, lady. You didn't notice he was missing 3 fingers? I mean, who drove him to the hospital? How did he heal? Like, where was he when he was healing from losing 3 fingers? Like, kind of something you notice at the dinner table at night. But anyway, he allegedly also used a photo of President Joe Biden for target practice. So the FBI raided Spafford's property. They discovered that he had more than 150 unsecured explosives in his home, and then on the property he had like a detached workshop or something where a lot of them were found, but they even found some of them in bedrooms in the house where he has 2 young children, and they had full access to these bombs. Like, some of them were in a completely unsecured area in a backpack. So then they found a jar of liquid. This was labeled dangerous, do not touch. And the FBI determined the liquid is a highly sensitive substance called HMTD. It is so unstable, they said, it can explode just by changing its temperature. And according to the investigators, Spafford had that liquid stored in a freezer right next to the quote unquote hot pockets. And this was also an accessible freezer for his children. So Spafford went before a new judge to determine if he can remain out on pretrial release, because you might recall when I first brought up this story, the magistrate judge allowed him out. The magistrate judge said he could be released into the custody of his mother and just held on house arrest. And they said, until the government files new charges, or if they file new charges, then we can revisit it. Because as of now, they have only charged him for possession of an unregistered short barrel rifle. And Spafford's attorneys have argued there is no evidence to prove that he was planning for violence or that he had threatened anyone. Well, this new judge ruled that Spafford would need to remain behind bars until his trial. So he will remain in jail until his trial. This was U.S. District Judge Arenda Wright Allen, and she wrote in her opinion that Spafford posed an, quote, extreme risk to his own family and the community. And she said, quote, Mr. Spafford has specifically stated he does not believe in government regulation when it comes to firearms, and he intentionally flouted the requirements for registration of short barrel rifles. The court is not confident that Mr. Spafford would be any more respectful of the imposed conditions of release. So, in other words, you haven't been proven to be an honest actor or to be trustworthy, to follow the laws, to follow the rules, so don't really trust you out there in the world. And then the judge also noted that similar defendants have always been held pending trial, and none of them come anywhere close to what they found on Spafford's property in regard to the amount of explosives that he was stockpiling. Judge Allen wrote, quote, "The court has not found a comparable case in terms of scale, but even cases involving smaller numbers of destructive devices and other factors that were positive for the defendant have resulted in detention." So again, in other words, people who didn't even have 150 plus bombs and had other mitigating factors in their favor, we still lock them up. So this guy needs to go away. He needs to be locked up until we figure this all out, until, you go to trial and we let a jury decide or what have you. So I imagine this is a tough one for the judges, though. I mean, based on the evidence revealed so far, at least what they've released to the public, it is true, at least from what we've seen, that he hasn't specifically threatened anyone. However, as I mentioned in the first video, his neighbor wore a wire, and they did allegedly catch him talking about some plan with his friends. Of course, without additional evidence, his defense attorneys are going to argue that, oh, it's all fantasy, it's bluster, he's just talking. But then again, if the judge allows him out and Spafford injures someone while he's out on bond, even if it's accidental, even if it's his own family, God forbid one of those kids sets off one of these bombs. And as I mentioned before, the feds, when they went in there, they said they had to detonate some of these explosives because they were so sensitive that they were afraid to transport them, that they might explode during transportation. So this is what he had his children around, allegedly. So, if the judge releases him and something goes awry, I mean, that decision will come back to haunt them. And, with that many explosives, he poses a risk not just to his family, but to his neighbors. I mean, can you imagine the lawsuits if the neighbors are injured, if their homes get blown up? So anyway, I'll let you know when I hear more on this and as the case progresses. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. Please like, please share, and subscribe to the channel if you have not. Please donate if you can. Love you all. Take care. Talk with you soon.